Hi, it's John from Crafts by John UK. Today I'm going to show you how I've made this gorgeous Believe in the Magic of Christmas card. We've got ourselves a beautiful polar bear which I've coloured using watercolour pencils, and I've also created a simple background below and above the horizon also with watercolour pencils. They are a medium, I don't use that often. I should use more often because they're great, and I'll just show you how with some basic colours you can create an effect like this. We've coloured our polar bear in, mostly in a kind of a grey and white palette, but with just a little bit of yellow to give it a little bit of contrast. We've coloured our little gnome type character and the packages and the knapsack and the envelope. So we've got ourselves quite a nice looking Christmas card there. And I'll show you how to do that in stages. So we'll stamp, colour, and then create the background and then finish the card. If you're interested, stay tuned. Okay, let's get started then. So we have got some watercolour cardstock here. This is what's the one I normally use, which is from Katzelkraft, which is this one here with all my bits of odd cut offs, which I don't throw away. This is a watercolour paper, acid-free hot press. It's 300 GSM, £140, and it's a great paper when you're working with water. So that's what we're going to use. And here is our stamp. It's a Katzelkraft stamp, and it's this gorgeous bear with a little gnome, and he's got some packages and a horn and some envelopes, so it's really cute. What I've done is I've taken that stamp and I've mounted it onto some stamping foam, and I've then got a peel off backing which I can just take off to stamp with, which makes life a lot easier. Excuse me. So I'm going to take my stamping platform, I'm going to turn my thing around because this is obviously a rubber stamp, so it needs to be a little bit thicker, and then I'm just going to pop this in. Now we want this kind of to the side over this way because we're going to use a sentiment from this woodware set, which is Believe in the Magic of Christmas. So I've actually got the stamp here so I can kind of see roughly where it's going to be. So I want the polar bear kind of here and Believe in the Magic of Christmas here. So that's roughly where I'm going to put things. So let's get this stamped. So I'm going to do this in black. I've got my VersaFine, that's blue. I've got my VersaFine Onyx black here. So I'm just going to pop that down and pick that up. Okay, let's take that off. There we go. I think that can probably come slightly over. There we go. So let's pick that up and let's stamp that. These Katzelkraft stamps are absolutely lovely. The detail on them is phenomenal. So I'm just going to ink that up. Apologies, I'm slightly off camera. But I'm inking that up, just using all the different areas of my stamp pad, just in case it's kind of a bit dry in any places. And then I'm just going to go for it. So give that a press down. Let it just rest a moment, soak into the paper. While you're letting that rest, grab your clear emboss. I'm going to clear emboss this because, well, you'll know if you've watched my other videos, I pretty much emboss everything. But I'm going to clear emboss it because I'm going to colour this in with watercolour pencils. So we want to get a really nice, good impression, and we want something that we can colour up to. So there we go. There's our image. And then dip that straight into our clear emboss powder. I keep mine in a tub. I just find that much easier. But there you go. You can see that's now covered in emboss powder. And then while that's just settling, I'll turn my heat gun on and start warming that up. So while that's doing that, I'm just going to give this a quick clean. It's always good to clean your stamps as you go along. Go, that's nice and clean and ready for my next use. So I will just pop its backing on. There we go. Right, now let's emboss this. So I'm just heat embossing it. It'll make it very nice and glossy, but it'll also really set the image. So that gives me a really nice edge to colour up to. And as I said, I'm going to be using watercolour pencils. I think I've never done a video using watercolour pencils, but I do actually really like them. I was going to just do the landscape or the surround of the polar bear with the watercolour pencils and actually colour him with my normal Arteza watercolour pens, but I just kind of thought, no, actually I'm going to do the whole card with watercolour pencils because they are quite a versatile and easy to use tool. So let's heat emboss the back as well, just to make sure I haven't missed any spots, and make sure every bit of powder is embossed. There you go, you can see now how shiny our image is, which is great. So let's move this stamping platform out of the way. Okay, now the pencils I'm using are these ones. These are the Derwent Inktense set. That's hard to say. They're made in the UK. It's 24 pencils and they're watercolour obviously. I've pulled a load of pencils out, but you can see you get quite a good range of colours. So I've grabbed a load out here, which we're going to use today. And we're going to use pencils and then just a paintbrush as well. And I've got some water in my distress spritzer. So that's what we're going to use today. Just going to pop them out of the way. Okay. Give the card a bit of a bend just to make sure you've got a flat surface to work with. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom in a bit so that you can really see what I'm doing as I'm colouring. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is the actual polar bear himself. So I've got a white, which is antique white, and I've also got a yellow, which I'm going to give him a little bit of yellow. I looked at some photographs of polar bears, and they're kind of white and dirty, basically. I know we've got this lovely image of them being white, but they're kind of not as white as we think. So I'm going to start, actually I'm going to tilt this slightly because otherwise it's going to play havoc with the focus, but I'm going to go in. So I'm finding my flat end on my pencil and I'm just going in round the edges with the white, and you can see what that does. That takes the black down a bit and makes it white. Apologies if my camera is shaking while I'm doing this. I'm actually going to change it soon. I bought a kind of wall mount thing, but I just need to get around to putting it up. So I'm going around the edges of the area that is polar bear with the white. And then what we'll do is we'll go in with our water and just pull that over the body. So you can see I'm not spending too much time, not taking too much care. I mean, it's white on kind of white, so how wrong could it go, let's face it. But just get some pencil colour laid down there. You can see it does dull down the black a little bit, which is good. And I'm just going over all the edges. Now, our little gnome kind of figure, we don't want to touch him really, but just go around all the edges of the image. There we go. And then what we're going to do, I'm going to just spritz some water. I'm going to spritz it kind of next to me. And then I've just got a basic little paintbrush and I'm just going to dip it in the water. And then I'm just going to pull the white pencil just into the body of each panel. So take some white and just go over the pencil. I don't know if you can see that, but I mean, obviously it's white on white. It's not going to be great to see or catch on a camera, but you can see it kind of just dulls the black down a little bit, which is kind of the effect we want really. So I'm just pulling that colour. You can see where I'm going over it with the white, it's kind of making the black a little bit grey. That's what we want really. We just want to dull it down a little bit. This is actually supposed to be a brown bear, but I decided I'm going to use it for Christmas, so I want it to be a polar bear. So we'll colour our bear in. There we go, and I'm just going all the way around. You can see the white does kind of leave an effect on top of the black ink, which is good. It kind of takes it down just a little bit. And just keep topping your pencil, your brush up, sorry, with water. Now, any way that you don't really want to dull down, like for instance the eye that I've just gone over, just grab a piece of kitchen towel and blob off, and that way you can easily control what's muted and what's not. Go. I think I've missed a little bit there. I don't know how I've done that, but that won't matter by the time we finish. Right, I'm just going to go back in at the back here. Right, there we go. So there's one layer. That's our first layer, which is the white. Clean your brush just on a little bit of tissue, and then not waiting to dry, not worrying about it at all. We're just going to go in with the yellow, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the yellow on these hind legs, which are kind of in the shadow. You can see that from the darkness, and then also just on the backs of the legs. So I'm just going to go with my yellow here, a little bit just down the backs of the legs, this area here, this back leg here, and just a little bit here. And what we're going to do is we're going to just take that down again with water. So just go under there. So then grab your water and then just daub. So don't brush in big strokes, because we kind of want to melt it, sort of merge it in with the colour we've already laid down. So we want the yellow and the white to sort of work together. So use a little bit of tissue. Sorry, I'm probably just not in exactly the right angle for you to see all of that, but just use your tissue, take a little bit off, and just kind of blend the two together. So you can see I'm getting a kind of a white with a slightly yellow tinge to it. This will give it a bit more realism. And then on that back, I'm going to actually give it a bit more. Again, if you think the colour is getting a little bit too bright, you can always take it off. Either take it off the brush or use your kitchen towel and just give it a blot. There we go. And you can see how easy that is to take the colour down. There's a blob I don't like, so I'm just going to take that off. Now here, we've got this kind of underbelly area. The back of that leg definitely needs to be kind of yellow, but again, that's a little bit too bright. So I'm just going to daub it with my kitchen towel. Kitchen towel, really useful to have next to you all the time when you're doing any kind of painting. So it removes a variety of sins. So take the white, or just neutralize your brush, and then just kind of blend it in a little bit. And again, just blot it off. There we go. And anywhere that it looks kind of a bit too dark, you can just blot. It's super easy. There we go. And then this under chin bit, we're going to just give him a little bit. There we go. So that's kind of given us just a little bit of variation in the colour. These things that exist in nature don't tend to be just one colour. And what we could do as well, if we wanted to, is take a brown. This is a mustard. You could just go along the very back and then pull some of that colour out as well. And this is the thing with these pencils, I quite like playing with the different colours. So just add another sort of layer of colour. There we go. So I'm just going to use a little bit of water, just thin that out a little bit because it's quite clumpy. There we go, and then just blot it away again. Remember, we're adding kind of layers. We don't want it all one flat colour. There we go. Cool. And then clean your brush, and then we'll move on to somewhere else. So we've actually got our kind of base layer of our polar bear already. So now we've got our base kind of colours, we can then move on to other things like the luggage and the gnome. So I'm going to use a kind of, again, that same kind of mustardy colour, just around this bag. So I'll just go in around the edges, just laying down an edge of colour. maybe the straps and the buckles, just lay a bit down. Basically we're just going around the edges, and then any kind of areas where there are particular bits of interest. So then again, just with a little bit of water, just load your brush up, and then just go up to that edge and pull the colour in from what you've laid down. So that way you get colour in the middle, kind of becomes a block of colour, but also it's just got a little bit of difference in the intensity. So that's how you kind of create that realism. So I'm just working my way around. I don't want to colour the envelope because I want to do that in a different colour so it stands out a little bit. So you see where, like at the bottom here, where I put the line of pencil down, you can see although I've pulled the colour away from it, that bit is still a little bit darker. So that's how we kind of build up and make that look. And if you pull too much away and it kind of loses that edging, you can always go back in with the pencil again. So make sure again you find a flat edge. You don't want it to be too harsh, but you can go in and just add a bit of that raw colour. And if you do it when it's wet, you'll find it's more intense. If you wait until it's dry, you kind of then need to go over it with the water again. So if I take just a tiny little bit of water, I can again edge, because I don't like that hard line, so I would always go kind of over the body again, just to smooth out that hard line. There we go. So there's our bag. This strap at the bottom is also, I think, a similar colour, so I'm actually just going to draw a line of colour down there, and then just ink that. I don't know quite really where that ends. It's a bit odd on the stamp really, but it's only quite a narrow line, I think, so that's enough. It kind of implies that it's there. Right, the gnome's hat, I think that's crying out to be a kind of a reddy colour. So again, it's dark at the bottom and light at the top. You can see we've got no shading at all at the top, and we've got black at the bottom. So colour black at the bottom, or well, no, sorry, follow the black at the bottom. And then what we'll do is we'll then take our water and we'll pull that colour up. So wet it. This is quite a dark colour, so I would definitely always take some off. Wet it and then pull it up. There you go. That, you see how vibrant that is in terms of colour. So be careful with something that bright. There we go, you see. And doing it like that, we get darkness at the bottom, but light at the top. Whereas if you just coloured all the way around on that, you'd have ended up with pretty much one colour, the whole thing. And you can always, again, blot. Just wet it and then take it off. Make sure you pick a clean bit of kitchen towel, obviously. Right, so then clean your brush off. Now we're going to do the coat, and I would typically do the coat in a green, because if you do it browns, it kind of then merges into the bag. Doesn't really look stunningly different. So I would go around the edges in just a dark green. Again, colour over the black, just to get a bit of colour, and then use your water. Purposefully quite a bright green, just so that it's clear what this is. We can always darken that down a bit if we think it's a bit too bright. I mean, it is quite bright actually. So let's take that down a bit, and I'll show you how to do that. So just take a bit of that off, and then what we'll do is we'll get a brown, for instance, and kind of go over some of these areas. And that's the good thing about these pencils, you can sort of meld the colours together. So just take a little bit of water and then just work the brown in to the green. You see, and that's changed the colour completely. It was a really vibrant green. Now it's kind of taken that down. I've gone over the edge slightly there, so what I'm going to do is just get some more water, clean my brush, make sure it's clean, and then just go in with some clean water and then dab that away. There you go, and you can see that's gone. So that's pretty good. And that's the good thing about these watercolour pencils, they're quite forgiving. Right, the beard of the dwarf, I think we need a kind of well, almost like a grey kind of colour, I suppose. But he's got a lot of colour in there, so I'm just going to do a bit of white and a little tiny bit of yellow. Because he's going to look a bit like a polar bear. There we go. And then his knee and shoe. So again, let's take kind of a brown. So go in there for the knee. It's the only bit of the leg we can really see. Kind of corresponding colour to the jacket he's wearing. And then the shoe, let's do quite a dark brown because we want a bit of contrast between that and the polar bear. So again, give it a bit of colour and then just pull that colour out. There we go. Now the packages, I would do them in just a similar sort of browny colour, but just go over the edges, go around the boundaries, follow any lines. See here, that one's a good example. It's crying for colour from the bottom up. So just colour that. So go over the brown, wake the colour up, and then kind of pull it down so that you end up with the colour left in the areas that you coloured the most. And that way we get the light and the dark. Again here, just go over the brown that you've laid down, waking that colour up. And then just gone over the edge there again. This brush isn't great, to be honest. This is the brush that I used for putting masking fluid on. So it's actually kind of destroyed. You can see it's got lumps of rubber in there from the masking fluid, which isn't great. So it's not really the best brush to be using to do this, but I'm kind of just going with it really. Got some little blobs there. And that's the good thing about these watercolour pencils. You can just tidy them up with water, which is great. There we go. So our packages are kind of done. Got a bit of variation in the colour, which is what we needed. I've just realised this is a horn here, so the back of that bag needs to be coloured. There we go. And then we need a kind of quite a bright yellow really for the horn. What's happened there? I've kind of missed a little tiny bit. I'm just going to draw that in. So I've just got a fine line drawing pen here. Look there. There's a little bit that's been missed there. And I could also just add a little bit of hatching in here, just to kind of fill that in. See how easy that is? Did you even know there was a hole there now? No. So let's just colour the horn. So I'd go over that with the actual yellow. but I think we need to probably dull our bag down a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to show you a little trick. So get a piece of similar watercolour paper, get your pencil, and just colour a little bit on there. Again, spritz a little bit of water, but instead don't take the colour from here. So here, by wetting that there, you've then got a whole load of the brown colour on your brush. You can now colour here kind of evenly because you've got that colour on your brush. That's a good way of kind of darkening down a whole area if you need to do it. So you can just, you're taking just the pigment really from the colour that's just on the bit of paper. There we go. Then we need to colour the envelopes. Now I would say, I mean, let's go for something different. Sherbet lemon, there you go. That's a kind of a bright green. So we can again use that same technique and just get the colour from there and colour straight onto the two envelopes. There we go, sherbet lemon. And I think the only thing left to do really is just give him a little tiny bit of colour on his face. Tiny little bit of purple, because I don't have a kind of flesh tone in this set. So I'm just going to mix that with a little bit of the, there we go. That's created a kind of skin tone, the greeny and the purple together. Right, there we go. So that's our figure mainly coloured. I just need to colour in the bell on his hat. And then we're completely covered, I think. Yep, we've got colour everywhere. So that's our main colouring done. Fine, so I'm going to pop those pencils onto one side. Now I've got a different palette of pencils here. I've got two blues, a dark blue, a kind of a turquoisey iris blue, that one is actually called. That one's called sea blue, and this is called teal green. We're going to use this to create our background, because at the moment we've got a lovely polar bear, but he's kind of floating in the middle of nowhere, so we need to ground him somehow. Now this isn't part of the stamp, so this is obviously going a bit free form, which I know for a lot of people is a bit stressful, but I'm going to show you there's a really easy way of doing it, so bear with me. So what we're going to do, we're going to take our kind of darkest colour, which is the sea blue, and what we're going to do is we're going to create an imaginary horizon. So I'm just going to go out from here, from his eye, and just take that line straight across my piece of paper, and then I'm going to find a similar on this side and just take it here as well. That is our, in effect, our horizon. So what we're going to do kind of a blue fade underneath around our polar bear, and then we're going to do a similar blue fade above, and then we're going to add a little bit of green in as well. So again, find a nice angle on your pencil with a non-sharp edge, and what we're going to do is we're just going to go around our polar bear, and we're just going to pull away from him, just giving, and don't, just go with the flow, don't worry too much about it, don't overthink it, but basically just kind of edge around him. Now around the paws and things, do a little bit more. So you can see I'm kind of, but all the time I'm following this plane. We're going left to right so that it kind of blends in with that that imaginary horizon we've just drawn. So just go all the way around like this. The good thing as well about pencils, unlike pens, is you have pretty much a time limit when you're working with pens, because stuff gets dry and then it doesn't work the same way. Pencils are the opposite. You can spend as much time as you want laying down colour like this, and it will always still work the same when you add the water. So go around, try obviously not to go over the lines inside the image of the bear, but if you do, that's not the end of the world. You can see I've done that there, and I'm just going to sort that out when I get to it. So kind of go around. At the back here, I'm going to just lay a bit more colour down, because I just want it to be a little bit darker. But again, I'm always working on that horizontal plane, left to right, left to right, left to right. So at the back here, and what we're going to do kind of fading off. So we're not going to fill this whole area. So we want it kind of against the figure, but not really going too far towards the edge of the paper. And what we're going to do is pull that colour out. I don't know if you can hear the wind, but it is blowing a gale here in the UK today. There we go. So there's our colour. And if you add a little bit more, if you turn the pencil so you've got kind of a slightly darker, there we go. You get a slightly darker colour, is what I'm saying. Right, okay, again, with the water, my water's getting empty actually, and kind of refusing to work because it's not actually in the water. But anyway, there we go. Right, so I'm just taking my brush with water, which I've just loaded up. I'll move that up just so you can see a little bit better. And what we're going to do now is we're going to kind of work up to the horizon. So you see I'm laying the water down, following that horizon along, but I'm going to definitely be using my my tissue here. And as we work that blue, you'll see it dampens down what we've put, but I'm taking it off so that when I fade it out, it kind of fades away to nothing, which is the effect we want. We want to kind of suggest there's a landscape and some stuff going on, but we don't want it to be too specific. And this is that lovely kind of watercolor look. So any areas like that where it gets a little bit heavy, just blot it away. Again, more water, go down the edge of the animal, and then just kind of pull it out. And we're just dampening down those heavily pigmented bits where the actual pencil is. There we go, we end up with that kind of effect. There you go, and the more you go over it, the more kind of layers of edging you get. So it's one of those, it's quite hard to know when to stop kind of things. So just keep going basically. So go all the way along your edges and just pull them out. In these areas kind of underneath, you could let them join up, but that sort of depends on the look you want really. So I'm going to take some off because that's now getting a little bit dark in there. And just add a little bit of water and then blot it. And all we're doing, we're implying that we've got a kind of an Arctic landscape around our little friendly polar bear. Again, getting a bit dark, taking it off. This is the thing, always have that kitchen towel next to you so that you can blot. So add some on and then blend it in. You can go back to places and kind of add more. If it's starting to look a little bit too dark, you can always blot it and take some away. There we go, and then just this end bit. So again, same as at the front, work up to the horizon so that that's at least one kind of proper solid line, and then just pull away from the figure. And then give it a blot if you want, or not, however you kind of want it, and then just go in and work it a little bit more, and that will thin it out so you end up with a slightly thinner effect. There we go, it's looking quite nice. The more you work these lines of pencil, obviously the less they become pronounced. And this is why you need a decent quality paper that can take quite a lot of water, because if this was a lesser paper, it would start to buckle. There we go, and then I'm just going to go back in here again, maybe in here. If you decide an area like this one needs a little bit more colour, you can always go in, just add a little bit more. Be sparing though, because it's already wet, so it will go darker quicker. And similarly, if you want to, you can put that colour onto a bit of paper, load your brush up with that colour, and then go in as well. If it's wet, obviously, it's going to spread. There we go, it's looking quite good. I might just put a little bit of blue over here. There we go. There we go. So we've got now our polar bear in a kind of landscape. Now what we need to do is do the top bit as well. So we do it in a similar way, basically. So I would say turn it around, upside down. You're going to do a similar, you're going to follow a similar thing. There's one little bit inside here between his hat and his head that we need to remember to do. So we're going to use the other blues. This is the iris blue, which is a lighter blue. Again, find a nice flat edge, and then we're just going to loosely shade away from our character, but also maybe just in the sky as well. But again, keep following that kind of horizon. There we go. And then I can go straight in and just paint that out. And I mean, obviously you can use a bigger brush if you're more confident, or a smaller one if you kind of want to just take your time. Leave a little bit of the blue because it kind of creates almost a cloud effect. Just be careful, obviously, near the main image. And if you find a patch of colour like I just did there, stretch that colour out and it will then thin it out as it goes. One is a bit thick, so I'm just going to thin that slightly. There we go. And there we go, we've kind of got a whole landscape going on now. This one I think is still just a little bit thick, so I'm just going to take that down a little bit. There we go. So he's looking quite good. Now we need to remember this little tiny bit in here. What I might do on that one is just actually take a little bit of water and take this blue directly off the page here, just to make sure. There we go, we get a decent blob of blue in there. Right, okay, so that's our blue. And then the last thing to do is our teal green. Now, we don't really want this too intense. We kind of want to mix it in with the colours we've got. So on this one, I would strongly suggest lay some colour down on the paper and use your pen, your paintbrush, sorry, to just take some colour off. Now that's going to be quite intense, so I would tap it off a little bit so it's not too much, and then just go straight in with it. And then we're going to take it off the paintbrush and just water that in a little bit so that we kind of blend it in. See, so I've put it down in the first instance. I then clean my paintbrush, and now this is just clean water. I'm just going over the edges just to soften those edges a little bit. And the longer you work it, obviously, the more it will take that edge down. There we go. I've got quite a bit of colour going on here, so I'm just going to kind of blend this in. And this gives us one of those kind of nice Arctic skies, really. Blues and greens. Suggest a little bit of a wintry day. We haven't got any green here. I'm just going to give it a little bit there, and then just clean my brush, go in with water, just blend that into the horizon. Maybe a little tiny bit more there. There we go, blend that in. As long as you keep going from left to right, you can't really go wrong. There we go. So you end up with a piece of paper that looks like this, with lots and lots of different colours on it. So when you finish, clean your brush. I really could do with some new paintbrushes actually. I think I have got some somewhere, but this one is kind of, as you can see, it's got the residue on it from masking fluid, which does play havoc with your brushes. There is actually a product you can get that cleans them really nicely, but I keep meaning to ask my friend Dina exactly what that product is. Right, let's just dry our worktop, and then what we're going to do is we're just going to use a heat tool to dry the card. I mean, you could let it dry naturally if you kind of want to wait, but I just want to get on with it. So dry it one side. And that will condense behind and then dry the back. There we go. So now we just need to finish our card off. What I'm going to do is just use my sponges. So I've got some smoothies here. I'm just going to take a kind of mid blue, maybe like this turquoisey one. I'm just going to go along the edges, just so that we don't have really bright, sharp white edges. I'm just going around, not putting any ink on the smoothie. I'm just using the residue of what was on there from previous use. And that's the good thing. If you keep your smoothies in a tub like I do, an airtight tub, they stay juicy, which saves you ink in the long run. There we go. So that's got rid of any white edge. And I've got here just a piece of blue scrap paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount this on blue and then mount it onto a white card blank. But first of all, we need to stamp our sentiment. So take back your stamping platform and I'm going to swap it over. I'm sorry, I'm a bit low, hence that hit the camera. Swap it back to the clear side. So we're going to stamp this sentiment in this top right hand corner. The sentiment is here and it says there we go. Believe in the magic of Christmas, which is quite cute. So we're going to put it kind of in this corner, somewhere like there. Just going to have to zoom out a little bit so that I don't hit the camera. And just make sure that's kind of square. So just taking my stamping platform out and I'm just looking at the stamp, just seeing if it's kind of roughly lined up, which it is. But before we do that, because we've worked on this paper quite a lot and it's been quite wet, I'm just going to use a little anti-static bag just to make sure that area is dry and free from fingerprints and grease. Now we're going to stamp this in blue. So I've got here my VersaFine Deep Lagoon. Apologies that I'm inking up the stamp on the other side so you can't actually see it, but when I bring it in you will. So believe in the magic of Christmas. I'm just going to stamp that. This is a woodware stamp and it's really lovely font. I really like the font, quite modern, but not so modern that they're not traditional. So again, I'm just going to emboss that. I need to do that corner just to make that nice and glossy and make it stand out on its background. So I'm just going to heat my heat tool whilst I clean that stamp. I like that woodware set a lot. I'm going to be using that, I think, quite a lot of Christmas stamps this year. And then we're just going to heat. You see that darkens it, makes it nice and glossy, which stands out really nicely on that sort of Arctic sky background that we did. Okay, heat from the front, heat from the back. Always do that just to make sure that you capture all the embossing powder. So I shall put that sentiment stamp away in a second. Right, and then we just need now to add a layer into our card. So I'm going to be using this blue paper. So I'm just going to use double-sided. Go all the way along the back. And you'll notice I'm laying the project down on the blue paper. That is so that just in case there's anything on my cutting mat, any ink or any colours that shouldn't be there, they don't go onto the panel that we've just made. It'd be an awful shame to spend all that time colouring it beautifully and then find some dirty grey mark on it because you didn't take care of it at this stage. So right, I'm just going to pull these tapes off. This is only a matte layer, so we don't need to sort of wiggle it around, so no need for bunny ears. Oh, that one I took too much off. I can fix that though. There we go. There we go. So grab all the tapes. And let's get rid of those. All right, so find a good corner. So we want to just look at our corners and then we'll just go in and just by eye give it a kind of even edge. There we go. And I would turn that over just to make sure. So I'm just going to take a piece of scrap and lay that down just in case. So press that from the back. Always good to work on the back. There we go, we've got quite a decent border around. Just now need to cut that down. So craft knife and metal ruler. And again, we're just doing it by eye. Looks relatively even. Make sure you've got a decent blade in your craft knife. I am a real one to go forever and ever and ever with the same blade, and it's blunt as hell, and then it starts screwing things up, and then I think, I really should change that because they're 10 a penny. There we go. So we've got a nice blue border now, and then we're going to go straight onto a card blank. So I'm just grabbing a 7x5 white card blank, which is here. Just going to score that. Make sure that's folded evenly. So I'm going to use my bone folder to just go in and make sure that that's absolutely in the right place. Do it from both sides, and then that will sit nicely on there. So I've just noticed there's one little tiny bit here. There's a little spot in this corner which I don't like, so I'm just going to spray a tiny little bit of water, wet my brush, go over that, just work it a tiny second, let it get wet, and then just dab it. Seeing that takes that away. This is the good thing about watercolours, they're very forgiving. Cool. And then we can then put our double-sided on the back of the actual matte layer. Again, you'll notice turning the project with the card, again to protect the front and make sure that there's no nasties going on it. There we go. Now this time we will do the bunny ears, so just take a tiny little corner, and this allows us to reposition and make sure we get it in the right place. I'm actually quite looking forward to getting my new camera set up, or my new camera holder set up, because it won't be directly in front of me, and it will allow me to see what I'm doing a little bit easier. Right, there we go. So that's our card. Just make sure, have we got any dirty marks we need to cover up? Not really. So we can go either side. But then we just need to lay that down, and then we jiggle it around just a little bit, just to see if we can get it in the middle. There we go. When you're happy it's in the right place, then just pull the tape, and then that will stick it down. Always leave a little bit more gap at the top than the bottom. That's a kind of a rule in card making. And always go over with your bone folder just to flatten down any edges, because when you cut with a scalpel, you do tend to get a slightly raised edge. This just gives you a more professional finish. There we go, and then just that last one. I usually tend to do the bottom border slightly wider as well. There we go, so there's our card. So we started off with a blank piece of paper. We stamped our polar bear image. We then coloured the whole thing in watercolours, and then we created a horizon, some backing in blue, and green, added the sentiment. That's, I think, a really nice Christmas card. So not too difficult to create. Hopefully that might help people if they're struggling with colouring. Just a bit of way of doing it with watercolour pencils. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. If you have, maybe give my video a thumbs up, or like and subscribe to the channel, and then you'll hear when I post other content. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.